have the Niners earmarked Jimmy Garoppolo's cap space for Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa? Because if that's their plan, that they just want to spend this $27 million on those two guys, then that would sort of explain why they're being so slow. It's like, well, we never even planned to enter the free agent market. Is that what they're doing? And is that even smart?
I'll give it. I mean, there's a part of it, right? Like they could say, we're not going to spend the 25. We're going to let it go this offseason, and then we're going to get it low. We're going to have it roll over. And when Deebo and Nick Bosa's contracts start to hit, because Deebo and Nick Bosa, the way their extension is going to work, I doubt they're going to really tear up their cap number for this year, because their number for this year is really friendly for the 49ers, given the level of both of them. So I doubt they'll tear it up. I think that it'll be an extension. So you're going to add on, and that number is going to change. So maybe when their contract hits, they want to have that extra $25 million to play with. Plausible. But the same people who always say this also say, well, they can have, if they really wanted to sign somebody, they can do more cap and roster gymnastics and do that. Well, if they really wanted to sign Deebo and Nick Bosa, there are avenues and ways to control the cap, especially with the Amazon deal coming in and the cap exploding, to get Deebo and Nick Bosa safely under contract while making all of this happen. So that conversation goes both ways.
I would expect that Deebo and Nick Bosa's cap number in 2022 will be pretty low no matter what extension they spend.
It's low in 2022, but I think it'll also be low in 2023 because the Niners love doing backloaded deals because they always anticipate the cap.
So there's no way that this money is being set aside for freaking Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa. Those two are not going to have big cap hits this year, even though they're going to get paid a lot down the line. They could use this money right freaking now on other players, and they don't want to.
And there's ways, right, to continue manipulating the cap. To make it all work. You can do it for a stretch period of time, especially when we talk about these windows in the NFL are fragile, and the Niners have one now. At some point, the Niners are not going to have George Kittle, Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, all these guys on one roster all together and playing great together. At some point, they're going to lose a couple of these players. Kyle Juszczyk, whether it's due to age, whether it's due to attrition, whether it's due to their contracts, becoming too priced, whether it's due to, diminished play. There's going to be something in the next few years that the Niners are not going to have all 7 of these players performing like, top, 35, 40 players in the NFL, right? Fred Warner included, didn't mention him. So there's going to be aspects of it, but I wouldn't say that, it's totally earmarked so they can do these extensions, because there's ways to manipulate the cap and avoid these extensions. I don't always, I look at it as also when I see teams like, I'll give you an example, right? I brought it up earlier in this show. You know how many players Kansas City is paying big money to? They pay Joe Thuney. They pay big Orlando Brown, who they also have to pay, by the way, give him his full extension. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, big Chris Jones. They were able to restructure Frank Clark, keep him under the cap. They were able to pay Justin Reed, who to me was a elite level safety that came on the market, like a really do it all, underrated, super good player. And then they were also able to get Juju Smith-Schuster. So, like, if you think there aren't avenues, especially with the guy like Parag Marathe, who, as much as, he's been criticized, and Grant, I know you criticize him a lot. The one thing he does really well is he does a great job of structuring all of these contracts in a way that the Niners don't have to cut Peter to pay Paul. They do a really, really good job of being able to get everybody under the cap at a number that makes sense. And it allows them to be flexible with what they do every year, because they have outs on a lot of these contracts before they get super expensive. I mean, the Charvarius Ward contract is the perfect example of that. The raw numbers look like, whoa, you paid Charvarius Ward that? Like, I know he's a good player. And then you get into the details of the contract and you're like, wow, that's a really, really fair structure for the 49ers.
Counterpoint, D Ford, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah. I mean, Garoppolo, in Garoppolo's case, D Ford contract, you're right.
It's not Parag's fault. It's John's fault. It's whoever won't get rid of this dude. Yeah.
In Garoppolo's case, they've had outs. They've had outs for 3 years. Yeah, they've had outs for 3 years. The number has been manageable for 3 years. So there's been no doubt about that. And that's where I cannot just give them saying, this money is earmarked for Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa. And that part of it, I don't buy as much. I mean, you look at Buffalo, Josh Allen's extension kicks in And I didn't love the Von Miller contract. I haven't seen the details of the Von Miller contract. I anticipate it's going to be one of those things where you look at the numbers and then you go, oh, it's basically a 2-year deal with 4 void years that they can get out of, and just different things like that. I'm not saying it's exactly that. I'm just saying it's going to be I expect it's going to be something like that. But he's a player that really puts, in my opinion, Buffalo over the top because they're missing that dominating edge presence that on a big down can go get them a pressure, a sack that can be game tilting. You look at Baltimore, who to me, Lamar Jackson is going to get big money at some point. It's going to be massive money. He's Lamar Jackson. He's a freaking MVP. He loses like 2 games a season. The guy's unbelievable. He's going to get big money, in my opinion, and they were still able to get the best safety in the market, in my opinion. They signed Ed Reed for big money in 2019. Marcus Williams is the exact player I think they expected, not Ed Reed, excuse me, Earl Thomas, when they signed him to be. And I think he's going to be awesome for Baltimore. I think it's a perfect mixture of talent and scheme fit. I think Marcus Williams makes perfect sense. So there are ways, again, like Baltimore didn't get the Lamar Jackson deal done yet. And they still went out and gave 5 years, $60 million to a very good safety. So don't tell me that there aren't ways the cap can be manipulated to create room for X, Y, and Z, but it cannot be manipulated for these extensions, because that's wrong. Because if you want to have the conversation about, hey, he's taking up 12.7% of their cap, but they can create 12.7% of cap space if they wanted to sign somebody. They just don't want to right now. Then we can have that same conversation of, hey, if they use the $25.5 million that they can create that same $25.5 million to create room for Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel. So that conversation has to be had both ways, in my opinion. You can't just say it's earmarked for Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa because it's a matter of convenience for your argument. I'm not saying one's right, one's wrong. I'm just saying you have to have the conversation both ways.